Welcome everybody. Hopefully you can hear me, and I think straight away you should notice that there have been some big dramatic changes here with the live stream. So first of all, before I explain all of that, actually let me just explain quickly what's happened. I've actually finally done all the research that I needed to do, and I've invested in a quality live streaming software. And what that means is that a couple of things. Obviously, I'm able to now plug in a high quality camera. So I have my DSLR plugged in and I'm streaming directly off that. I also am able to use one of my condenser microphones, which obviously makes a big difference to the audio quality. And of course, I can do lots of cool things, like we can have picture-in-picture, so we can finally read articles together. We can actually read articles together, which I think is a big development. Thank you, Lawrence. Lawrence says that he loves the 80s style montage music. Thank you, my friend. And you'll see other graphics and things that I've got that we can use. In fact, something I've just noticed, funnily enough, is that should be there. No, that shouldn't be there. That should be there. So one thing I should say too is that there's going to be a few teething problems today. So if we're all of a sudden we're in the middle of our live stream and something crazy like this, you'll know that I'm still there's teething problems. So hopefully, though, I've had a few dry runs and hopefully we've solved those kind of issues. That was deliberate, by the way. Those who are wondering, that was me attempting to demonstrate what would happen if I made a mistake. So someone's saying the video's a little choppy. How is the audio is a good question. G'day Benzo, how are you? Good to have you with us. I apologise, this internet can be a bit of an issue around here at times, so hopefully the audio though is okay. I've done a couple of dry runs to try and get the lag sorted, so if there's any issues then please let me know and we'll see what we can figure out. But in the meantime, someone says it's like I'm moving in slow motion. Audio is perfect, but the video is choppy. Is that right? Is that a correct? Okay. Apologies. Hopefully this will sort of resolve itself as we go. Okay, so it's my new look, man. It's my new look. We've got a few things to talk about today. I guess the big thing really is my top 10 movies of the last decade. Someone said to me on the way in here, who was that? Fred G said, top 10 movies of the last decade. Aren't we going to wait till the decade actually ends, like the end of this year? Is that when the decade ends? I don't know. Who knows? I mean, when does the decade end? But anyway, as I said in the comments, that famous communist dictator once said, now is year zero. I will decide when the decade ends. This is a dictatorship, not a democracy. It's what my dad used to say all the time when we were trying to get away with something we shouldn't have. Someone says to me, low FPS. Okay, low frames per second. Okay, that's interesting. Let me just have a quick tweak and see if I can fix that for you. Video. Stream. Here we go. It seems to, okay, we'll see what happens as we go. Anyway, so we've got a bit to talk about. The big thing, as I said, is the top 10 movies of the last decade, which I'll get onto. We'll sort of end up the show there because it's the big guts of the episode. But before we do that, just a little a vinyl update, just a quick one. I've managed to purchase a couple more bits of vinyl. Oh, before I do that, a huge thank you to everyone who supports this channel. To everyone who is on Patreon supporting this channel, everyone who has put money into PayPal and continues to support the channel on PayPal, I really appreciate your support, and it's because of your support that today we've got this brand new looking live stream, which hopefully we can sort all the glitches out as we go, and everything is much improved. So thank you very much, and thank you for the ongoing support. If you want to support and you don't already, there's a link in the description below. Someone says the movement seems jittery. Yeah, I'm seeing that myself, and let me see if I can figure out we'll have to figure that out and see what the problem is as we go. Alex said there'd be teething problems this first one. Apology. Okay, so here we go. So a quick vinyl update. I managed to purchase a couple of vinyls. I've got myself a copy of Tea for the Tillerman by Cat Stevens. It's a second-hand copy. It was in a $5 bin, and it's, to be fair, it's there's a couple of scratches on it, and the cover's water damaged. It's not the old gatefold edition. It's not the new one they released, but funnily enough, that's the charm of it. The fact that it's not the new one is quite good, because the audio quality is it's just there's something about an original record, and the quality, even one it's got the crackles and the pops and everything. And some of the newer records don't capture that. They weren't recorded properly. So yep, Tea for the Tillerman. And this is the vinyl that I bought brand new. That I'm really happy about. And that is the Smiths. The Queen is Dead. And I have a particular love for this album. So does my wife, because our song actually is on this album. There Is a Light, and It Never Goes Out. It's an awesome song. There Is a Light and It Never Goes Out. If you haven't heard it, go and listen to it. Not now, in the middle of a live stream, but go and listen to it later. Okay, so that's a quick little vinyl update. Let's see, how's everyone out there? So a couple of people saying maybe they're streaming at too high a video quality or bitrate. Yeah, that's a good point. And unfortunately, I don't think that's something that. Let's see what I can do here. I wonder if that. Please let me know. Has that made any noticeable difference? What I've just done there. Yeah, it is a brilliant album, Warren. Yeah, I love that song. If a double-decker bus kills the both of us, to die by your side is such a heavenly way to die. Alrighty. Okay, so how's the video quality looking now, folks? Again, apologies for the awkward teething problems as we go. Let's carry on, and if we can't fix it today, then I will do my best to have it fixed by our next live stream. But let's it hasn't improved. Okay. Same. Okay. Well, what I might have to do is fix that on the next go around, and we'll try and drop the cannot be changed while streaming the frame rate. C. James says the couple still have songs with all this oof music. Yes, good question. Good question. We do. We still have a song. Okay. I'm getting conflicting reports now. It could be the internet or it could be the frames per second. So we'll see what happens. I will do my best to try and remedy that next time, and we can't fix it in the middle of the stream. So apologies for that. But I want to talk about the issue of Wuhan coronavirus racism, and this is something I mentioned in the sort of the preamble to the show. And let's jump over there and have a look at this article. So basically, what's happened is there are people who are trying to make a big deal out of the fact that apparently coronavirus is, as op-ed says, as coronavirus spreads, so does racism and xenophobia. The Joker is staring menacingly at my shirt. Yeah, sorry for those who can't see the shirt. Arkham Knights, baby. Okay, so use a sepia filter and it'll look perfect. Oh no, it's that bad, eh? So anyway, here's the article. So as coronavirus spreads, so does racism and xenophobia, and we're sort of seeing a bit more of this now starting to pop up in the media. Let's just jump past quickly the what's this? That dodgy Bridezilla? No, whatever it is in Australia. Okay, let me read from the article. The hysteria around the coronavirus has uncovered deeply rooted anti-Chinese sentiments and xenophobic attitudes. The viral spread of disinformation and the mainstream media's framing of the coronavirus as a Chinese disease is dangerously intertwining racism and fear. And straight away, I'd have to say, well, the disease itself doesn't have an ethnicity, but it clearly is a Chinese disease right now, in the sense that it's emanated from China, and it is a massive problem in China. And like the lockdowns and the quarantines are pretty serious that they're enacting over there. So is it really that unfair that the media are referring to it as a Chinese issue? The coronavirus has sparked vitriolic responses from across the country. Talking about New Zealand, a Rotorua, which is a city here in New Zealand, councillor has faced online abuse, and an Auckland doctor has been told to go home to China after she sneezed on the bus. Now, to be fair, the bus is one of those places where you can still meet crazy people. So if you want to go and see crazy and hear crazy, just ride a few buses. Honestly, it doesn't take much. So, here's the thing. As the old saying goes, one swallow does not a summer make. So you can pick out isolated incidents of people being idiots and stupid, and that happens everywhere with any issue. Pick an issue. You can find racists in any culture, but to then take it to the next level and say, well, this is proof that there's a systemic or an endemic or a major crisis of racism across the population is, I think, is highly questionable. It seems most people believe the virus can be passed on by every person of East Asian descent. I don't know anyone who believes that. And she says, which is not true. Well, of course, I don't know anyone who believes that. A Chinese New Zealander may not have been to China in many years or never been at all, so they are no more of a virus carrier than the next person. Yes, but if they've been to China, they are. And of course, because it's a Chinese problem and it's the scale of it is off the charts in China, then it's only natural that people in your society are going to have, they're going to have a heightened awareness, perhaps heightened fears, even if they're unreasonable, around people they meet with Chinese ethnicity, and that's not the same thing as being racist. It just isn't. That's not what racism is. But now we've so abused that word, and we're using it for everything. As someone here says, define racism. Yeah, as Kane Fap says, but remember, New Zealand is a steaming hotbed of white supremacy, right? Yeah, and that's been the lie that's been propagated since the atrocities of the mosque shooting, unfortunately. But many Chinese New Zealanders still have family in China, and while they may be worrying about their family's health, they are becoming victims of racial prejudice instead of receiving compassion. Yet there is no excuse to be hostile towards immigrants. I agree, there is no reason to be hostile at all. The World Health Organization has advised against travel restrictions as it could have the effect of increasing fear and stigma with little public health benefit. Well, quite frankly, that I always thought that was odd advice from the World Health Organization, when they are the same organization that always talks about the importance of containing a virus, especially one that can kill. And these countries are letting their policies be guided by racism and fear rather than rationality. Now, that I would suggest to you is simply not true. In fact, here in New Zealand, to anybody who's watching who is a New Zealander, you will understand probably the laughable nature of that suggestion. We are currently governed by a progressive government. How progressive? They're currently trying to push through a liberalised abortion bill which will legalise abortion up to birth in this country. They have initiated a cannabis public referendum on legalising cannabis. They have a hate speech bill coming in the next few weeks. So the fact that they have implemented a travel ban tells you that their own experts have looked at the issue dispassionately and said, there's a problem here. And the problem is on a scale that demands a serious response. So it's not racism, I would suggest to you. It is just basic prudence and trying to contain in a constantly evolving situation. I'll talk more about that aspect in a second. It leads to the Chinese citizens of these countries being ostracized in their communities and gives an excuse to those already prejudiced against them. That can happen, but that can happen with anything. Prejudiced people are going to be prejudiced, and they'll find a reason to be prejudiced. I'm a proud New Zealand-born Chinese woman, and I understood xenophobia from a young age. When I was 8 years old, a group of Pakeha teenagers yelled the classic phrase at me, "Go back to your own country." It's a type of memory that sticks with you. Now, it's not nice that that happened to you, but the fact is that if you want to see people being nasty to each other, first place to go probably is Twitter. That's the quickest place to see nastiness. Then if you want to see outlandish and passive-aggressive bullying type stuff, jump on the media. And anything, you probably won't take you long to see that in the media. Third place, if you've got a bit more time and you can sit there without looking like a creepy weirdo watching people, is watch a group of teenagers. It won't take long for them to say horrible, nasty things to each other. That is one of the hallmarks of teenagers. My daughter, who's not even a teen, she's a preteen, and in her primary school, she's already being hassled for certain things, based on me, actually, believe it or not. So yeah, that's a common problem amongst teens. Again, I don't know if it points to a major crisis of racism. If it wasn't that, it'd be something else. My daughter, who's white, they target her for other things that have got nothing to do with race, but are just as nasty. When the news of coronavirus broke out, I was immediately concerned about the exclusion and bullying young East Asian children may face as a result. Now, that's interesting because it sort of, to me, points to perhaps a misplaced priority there because of the seriousness of what's going on. I think that that in actual fact, the first concern should have been people who could die, or what the spread of this virus would actually mean. At Rolleston School in Canterbury, which is just down the road from me here in Christchurch, an anonymous person emailed a parent calling Asians virus spreaders, quote unquote, and that they needed to protect Kiwi kids. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. There's a really interesting question about that email. I read that article last week about that. How did that person who sent that email get the email address of the Chinese parent that they emailed? That person, apparently their email address was not publicly listed. Now, as you know, what that means is the only way to get someone's email address is they give it to you or you find it somewhere. So either the person knows that person's email address for some particular reason, or it's possible, right, that someone may have done what people, and I don't want to cast aspersions, but it does happen. People will fake these kind of incidents as for whatever reason. And so it's possible that one, and as I said, the big question is, how do they get someone's private email address to send them that email? Which kind of raises some strange questions. Anyway, so then she goes on about the media's spread of disinformation, and I agree, the media lives in the fear-mongering zone. I think I might do a future live stream about this, about media scaremongering and the sort of the corruption of the media in that way now, which is sort of more and more common. And she sort of goes on from there. She talks about people eating bats. It doesn't mean that consumption of bats started the coronaviruses. Researchers believe the virus may have started from bats but passed into other animals which a person could have eaten. As I understand, all of this is very much up in the air at the moment. And the interesting thing is you've even got the Chinese government come out. I won't play the video clip now, but the Chinese government have even come out now. You've got a Chinese official saying that they're warning Chinese nationals. They're talking about this problem of racism and xenophobia. Now, to me, that's interesting because all of this, I think, points to a misplaced sense of frustration. Really, the reasons I think so much of this exists as a problem is because of the fact that the Chinese government, the communist government, have been so dishonest in the way they've handled information. That they have been so dishonest in the way they've handled information, that they have been not forthcoming. Clearly there's a problem here. When you've got progressive countries like ours with young prime ministers who are not given to fits of xenophobia, just the opposite, in fact, who are saying we need to enact travel restrictions. That tells you, and I've read the articles. Here's an article that just appeared yesterday, actually, from one of our experts here, a health expert, public health expert who works in the university system here. And he says, appears to be spreading in a silent transmission pattern and is looking far more like a pandemic than SARS was. So even though so far the fatality rate percentage-wise is lower, it is looking like a pandemic, and that's serious. So there's and the way the Chinese government has handled information and not been very forthcoming, and I'm sorry, but they've just got to take ownership for that. And I would suggest that's the priority. And if you're frustrated by a lot of this, then I would suggest direct your frustration at the Chinese government. Arresting that doctor who first blew the lid on the problem. Come on. Arresting him for spreading, false rumours or something he was charged with. Now, he died a couple of days ago, sadly. But these are not the actions of a country that tells the truth. I'm old enough to remember Chernobyl. It happened when I was a kid, and the way in which the communist regime in Russia was not forthcoming about information about that, because there's a certain thing, I think, that's preloaded into communism, a certain short man syndrome, if you like, little brother syndrome, where they desperately want to or have to try and prove that communism is equal or to or better than any sort of capitalist or free market system. And so there's a vested interest in them basically downplaying any incident that's like a crisis. But this is a crisis. Within China, what they're doing is serious. They're dragging families. I've seen the footage. They're dragging families off to quarantine camps. And I mean, it's a notorious place of human rights abuses. They've got a vested interest in keeping information silent because they don't want to have the regime or their leadership look bad in front of either their people or on the global stage. So, yeah, quite frankly, I think that's where the frustration should be. I don't think there is a racism pandemic, as some are calling it, at all. I think that is just as much media scaremongering and overhyping as what we've seen perhaps at times around this virus. And there has been media overhyping. Yeah, so that's my take on all of that. I've had where are we? Mod M, thank you for the super chat. Would love to get your in-depth thoughts on Gladiator. Best movies of 2000 to 2010 video, maybe. Funny you should say that because I'm actually thinking about making that a subject of the next live stream or the live stream after. Is I thought while I was getting ready for today's episode with the top 10 movies of the last decade, I thought to myself, you know what? I actually think there's probably something in going back and from 2000 to 2010 and looking at those movies, because there were some really good movies. There was one or two movies in particular, for some reason in my mind, I thought, oh, those movies came out in the last 10 years. In fact, they're over 10 years old. And so it got me thinking it'd be worth highlighting those as well. So yeah, but anyway, on the coronavirus issue, I don't think there is a pandemic of racism. A couple of movie reviews while we're here. Let's talk about films. And as per usual, this stupid article is going to try and play a video. Is it? No, here we go. It didn't. I don't think it did. Apologies about this. Sometimes you know how videos autoplay in a newspaper article. So, yeah, okay. I don't think that all Chinese people are racist. I think that, like every society, you have, what do they call it, in-group preference, where people that you associate with, you understand their culture, their eating habit, you understand them as a people, you tend to have more comfortability with them. Outsiders are often treated differently. Look here, and in this situation like this too, with this particular virus, there people have been accusing others of racism for doing things like, for example, last week there was an article about a European person who was in a hospital. They got into an elevator and it was full of Chinese people. I think it was a Chinese family, I think from memory. They got into the elevator and they immediately held their breath. Now, first of all, that's dumb, because holding your breath in an elevator full of people, if someone's infected with something, that's not a thing. There's no public health advisory. Whatever you do, hold your breath and you won't get a virus. That's not a thing. But secondly, when someone gets into an elevator, they're in a hospital. They know that this is a problem in China on a scale that is just off the charts. They know that people have travelled from those regions to our country in the last couple of weeks. They also have been told by health authorities that they need to be extremely cautious. And they also know that the authorities have told Chinese people, if you're feeling unwell, you should come and report to a hospital. So they step into an elevator, and what do? They have a heightened sense of awareness. I think the worst you could accuse that person of is being fearful. That's the worst that you could accuse them of, I think. And they get in the elevator and they hold their breath because they think, these people could have the virus, I'm protecting myself against it. That is not the same thing as racism. It would be racism if they got into an elevator, I don't know, full of Eastern European people. And they immediately held their breath because in their mind they thought, well, I think Eastern European people are dirty disease carriers and they could have this coronavirus as well. That would be racism, right? There'd be a prejudicial, unjust prejudicial motivator that drives what they're doing. Not just fear of getting a virus, not just practical realities and things like that. So Jose, yeah, Media Maniac says that's so stupid, holding your breath. It is dumb, right? It's not a thing. Just hold your breath. If it was that easy, gee, we'd have solved the problem by now. Watt says, not illegal to hold your breath and not racist either. I agree. It's just someone who's walked in an elevator and has, because of their heightened sense of awareness. Look, I travelled last week on a plane and there were European people with face masks on, and I'm thinking to myself, we're just going to Australia. And they've got the face masks on. There's such a heightened sense of fear of some people about these kind of things. And the media haven't helped that heightened sense of fear. Not only that, but even if you're wearing, some of them weren't even wearing them properly or the right sort of masks. And if you don't have eye coverage, then the masks may have a positive impact in that they might avoid you touching your nose as much, but that's a maybe. Other than that, there's, you've probably touched the handrail. Those same people I saw some of them, they went to the toilet on the plane, which everyone uses on that flight. They touched surfaces. They touched escalator handles. They held onto the rails. Yeah. But that's the reality of what we're dealing with. So, as Jose M says, 2020 presents Train to Wuhan. I'm going to talk about that actually in a minute. Oh no! And those who don't get the reference, we will talk about and explain that reference in just a second. So anyway, let's have a look now at a couple of movie reviews. I finally got to watch a couple of movies that I've been wanting to watch for a while now in the last few weeks. So first of all, I got to see the film Hellboy, the new Hellboy. I watched it the other night. I'm subscribed to a local streaming service since I ditched Netflix, and it arrived there the other night, and so I watched it. And I would have to say it wasn't quite as bad as I was expecting. David Harbour was better than what I thought he would be in the role, but not as good as Ron Perlman. But the movie itself, it wasn't good. The criticisms of it were generally fair, I think, and basically some things were possibly a little bit nitpicky, but the criticisms I think were generally fair. It went on and on for ages. Here's a funny thing. I was speaking of racism and profiling. At the start of the movie, I was thinking to myself, man, Liv Tyler's really doing a strange accent in this film. And then I realised it was Mila Jovovich. It wasn't Liv Tyler at all. So those females, they all look the same to me. GameFap has asked me, did I see Joaquin's weird Oscar rant? We're gonna talk. Oh, I didn't see the Oscar rant. We're gonna talk about his BAFTA one though. Anyway, so Hellboy, it was so long. It just went on and on. I'm waiting for this movie to end, and it just keeps going and going and going. It was not a great film. The hype, the criticisms I think were fair. On the plane last week, when I flew to Australia and contracted the coronavirus, what did you say? What? No, when I flew to Australia last week on the plane, I watched Jojo Rabbit. I finally got to see Jojo Rabbit. Here's my take on it. There were some funny moments. Classic Taika Waititi. I like his films as a general rule. Media Maniac says nothing quite like the old Hellboys. I agree, and I think the original Hellboy was great. Ron Perlman really made that film so good. Jojo Rabbit. I finally got to watch Jojo Rabbit, though. Here's my take on it. There are definitely some funny moments in the film, and there's definitely there's great little comedic moments that if you like Taika Waititi, you're gonna like. Overall, though, I was a bit disappointed in this film, and I felt the big issue for me was that it actually treated the Holocaust in far too superficial a way. In the trailers, what I was presuming was that they were going to use the humour as a tool to really, I wouldn't say pay homage, but to perhaps draw people to think or contemplate more deeply about that serious moment in history. And a great example where this has happened and that did this well was the film Life is Beautiful. It's one of my wife's favourite films. I really love it. If you haven't seen it, Life is Beautiful, amazing film. And what it does is it takes that comedic thing and it uses it as a really great tool. And when it hits you hard with the horrors of the Holocaust. It really hits you hard and the impact is deepened. This film just felt so superficial in that regard. And there were lots of things. One of the things for me was the the use of like he does this in his movies, Taika Waititi, but the use of really 80s pop songs, and you have German singers singing 80s pop songs, and it just, to me, it felt like what was it? It was a weird sort of comedic choice that actually I think was too superficial in a film like this. Again, go and look at Life is Beautiful. They use comedy, they use light-hearted music, but it seems to be more appropriate. Look, for me, it was just a bit of a disappointment. It really tried to hammer home a point that was serious at the end. The point was all about prejudice and the evils of extremism and failing to respect the human dignity of other persons. And there's one character in particular, I'm trying to think which one was played by Sam Rockwell, who sort of has a redemption moment, but all of those things, the redemption moment comes at the end. It should carry more weight, but they just don't, because I think it's treated things a little too superficially. There was a superficiality that wasn't good. Oh, g'day, Andre. Great to have you aboard, mate. Apologies. Those who just joined and you're watching lagging stream with frame rate issues, apologies. Teething problems with the new software. We'll get it right next time. Media Maniac says this: Jojo was fine, but the tone was a bit off. Needed to take subject matter more seriously. Agree with you that said scenes like the shoe scene worked well. Yeah, the shoe scene again. See, there's good moments in it, and these things though should carry more gravity. Someone I know in the States wrote an article about this a couple of days ago, and they suggested she's got Jewish heritage, and she said that they could learn a few things from Mel Brooks when sort of tackling this sort of subject matter. And I think that's probably a fair statement. It is, in funny ways, the way Taika Waititi approaches filmmaking. It worked well in Thor Ragnarok. It works well in Hunt for the Wilderpeople. If you haven't seen Hunt for the Wilderpeople, very good film based on a book called Wild Pork and Watercress by a Kiwi bushman Barry Crump. He was a classic, this guy. He was a hunter and a bit of a bushman. He was a sort of a real bloke's bloke. He would always appear in a bush shirt, swan dry with a hat on, and he wrote quite a few books. He wrote a classic, famous book in New Zealand called Bastards I Have Met. Yeah, more Bastards I've Met, Bastards I've Known. And he wrote a sequel to that book called More Bastards I've Known. Wild Pork and Watercress, great book. And Hunt for the Wilderpeople is based on that book. And it works well. It works really well. But in this film, I don't think it worked as well. So, that was my take on Jojo Rabbit. Here's an interesting comment, actually. It's GameFap says, I find it hilarious how people complain about actors portraying different ethnicities, but no one cared about Taika Waititi portraying a white character. He actually, interestingly enough, it's funny how we got selective in that regard, aren't we? It's funny how, interestingly enough, he does have, he has Jewish ethnicity and ancestry. I think it's on his mother's side. I think it's Jewish Europe. I'm not sure. I'm straying into territory I don't know, so I won't say. But anyway, it was Eben Hawk podcast says it was to be a screw you to Hitler. And Eben also says Taika Waititi is a Māori Jew. You're right, he is. He's got Jewish. It's on his mother's side, the Jewish ancestry. He made a great film, by the way, if you haven't seen it, called Boy. And for those, if you're a New Zealander, you'll know that film. Before Taika Waititi was famous anywhere else, previous films he'd made. Boy was great. It takes quite a dark turn though. It takes quite a dark turn, but yeah, it's just, you'll see his style when you go back. He's been consistent in his style, that's for sure. In that movie Boy, he plays a bit of a deadbeat dad, basically. Well, a deadbeat dad who wants to be more than he is. And he's a Māori. He plays a Māori in that. In Thor Ragnarok, he obviously plays Korg. He's an alien. Yeah, I really didn't. I don't get too panicked by the whole different ethnicities playing other ethnicities. I think if they can do it well, and that's what acting is, isn't it? The whole point of acting is you fake a character that you are not. And so, yeah. I mean, I think if it's offensive, that's a different story. But, if it's deliberately trying to be offensive and it's deliberately, like it's actually racist, then sure. But if it's someone just portraying another race, then I don't know. I don't have a problem with that. Maybe I'm a simpleton. Maybe I'm not woke enough. Yeah, Media Maniac says, talks about Inglourious Bastards worked better as a dark comedy than serious drama. And that's an example of how it works. That works. It gets the tone right. Yeah, it's true, isn't it, that Hitler may have had Jewish ancestry. That's quite conceivable. Stefan, did you see Parasite? No, but we're going to talk about Parasite in just a second, Stefan. I haven't seen it yet. I'm planning to try and watch it this week if I can, rent it and have a look at it. Okay, so the final movie that I saw on the plane last week while I was contracting coronavirus and the pandemic of racism that clearly is also doing the rounds at the same time, I watched a really great movie that I really, really enjoyed. Jose says the kid from Deadpool was recruited by Deadpool and Deadpool 2. Yeah, it is the same young fella, Ricky Baker. He's a bit of an institution here in New Zealand, that guy, that young fella. He's well known. Ricky Baker. Okay, so anyway, final movie that I got to see, and this is one that I did not, as I said, while I was contracting coronavirus and the racism pandemic on the plane last week, I saw a film that I had never heard about. And this sometimes happens to me. I get on a plane and I discover there's a film and I think, I didn't know that film existed. I'll give it a try. And so I jumped on and I gave the film Driven a watch, and I really enjoyed this film. Really, really enjoyed this film, and I would recommend it. It's it is, you look at that it's a bit deceptive, and initially when I looked at the promo image for it, you can see on screen now, you think, oh, is this sort of one of those lowbrow comedic things? It's actually not. It is you might call it a dramatic comedy maybe, or a comedic dramedy. It's based on the true story of DeLorean, the guy who created the DeLorean car, and in particular the incident where he was convinced by his neighbor when his company got into serious financial issues and he needed millions of dollars in cash pretty quickly. In the movie, they really do have him. They highlight the point that he was trying to save jobs in Ireland, where he'd set up the plant to build and manufacture these cars, and that they put that motivation into it. That he was trying to save people's jobs, and he desperately needed money. He couldn't get it from the regular sources. So his neighbour, who had a bit of a jaded history, convinced him that he should buy $30 million in cocaine, and that would be the way to do it. Use cocaine as a financing tool for your company. Now that sounds, as I said, like a lowbrow comedic plot. It's a true story. It actually, the way it all unfolded happened, and the story is about that. Now when you read that, you think, okay, I knew a little bit of the DeLorean story. The failures of the company, how the car, which by all accounts was, could have, if he had the money, it could have actually been something special. But I thought, okay, this is going to be sort of one of those comedic hyperbole type films that you do. You take a real incident, you just sort of blow it up with for poetic effect. But I tell you what, it was actually, it actually, there's moments in this film where you think, man, they've really nailed the script writers of this film have really nailed the whole question of moral culpability and moral complexity, and what happens when your neighbour is a bit of a shady character, but he's also a charmer. Everyone likes him, and it's these characters are complex. The motivations of DeLorean and those around him, the FBI agent, it's absolutely fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating. And I really enjoyed this as a film. I really enjoyed this as a movie. It's and you get to the moment, I won't spoil it for you, you get to the moment where the drug deal is going to happen, and you're so invested. Well, I was so invested. I was like, please don't, knowing the true story already, and I'm still thinking, don't do it. And even there's moments where his neighbor, who had actually developed a friendship with him, is you're thinking to yourself, what is going through his head right now as he sets him up? He undercover sting operation, and he's the guy who dobs him in and agrees to set him up. It's it is. I enjoyed it. It was a good film. And it was a film that suffered from a lack of marketing, obviously, because I had not heard about it until I got onto that plane and contracted the coronavirus and the pandemic of racism that was going around while I was watching my movies. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Oscars and awards and stuff. Did everyone see the BAFTAs? Did anyone see the BAFTAs? Does anyone care about the BAFTAs? I watched little snippets. I was working in Australia last week, so it's not like I had a lot of time, but I caught little snippets of things and the news videos that popped up and everything else. And I saw, first of all, Joaquin Phoenix giving his speech at the BAFTAs, not the Oscars, where he gives the BAFTA speech about how, he wins his best award, a Best Actor award. And then he starts talking about sexism and the lack of males, but he still takes the award. And I thought to myself, Joaquin, just stop. I have respect for someone who holds a position, even one that I might disagree with, if they're consistent in their application of their principles, so they have integrity. So someone who says that gets up and says, I believe this ceremony is a sham, and so and then they follow through and they say, therefore I'm not accepting this award. They leave it on the podium and they get down. Now, I would disagree with someone who got up and said, I think this is sexism, and so I'm going to take a stand against that. But I would respect that they have had integrity. Someone who gets up and complains about the awards process and the awards system and then accepts the award and happily walks away with it from that same process, I'm sorry, you are a hypocrite. You have no integrity. That is not an integrity-filled position to adopt at all. And so, yeah, Joaquin, no. I didn't see his Oscars speech. I haven't had chance. I was trying to sort out issues for today's live stream, actually. And funnily enough, still didn't get everything right. By the way, quick question. How's the frame rate now? Is the frame rate still odd? Is the audio okay? It seems that people have hung around, so hopefully it's bearable. Anyway, so his Oscars speech, did people see his Oscars speech and what he said? What did he say? What has said Joaquin should have listened to Ricky Gervais. Yep, and so should, by the way, at the BAFTAs, Rebel Wilson. Rebel Wilson got up and gave an awkward, delivered an awkward, it was supposed to be I guess a comedy monologue, but gee, that opening line sort of crashed and burned, and then there were other things you're like, oh, and then there were one or two moments that were funny. She's a great comedic actress, Rebel Wilson, but it doesn't mean that just because you're a great comedic actress that you necessarily, when you get up and try and start waxing lyrical about current affairs and politics, that you're going to pull that kind of comedy off well. And unfortunately, it crashed and burned a little bit. But then when she got up and she again did the same thing with Joaquin Phoenix, made a joke about the Best Director category and how it was all about genitals. This seems to be the focus. Oppression du jour this year is for the Oscars is the question of sexism. Previous years they've highlighted the question of race. Global warming was floating around, and now we've got into the territory of sexism apparently. And so she made a sort of a big deal about that. And by the way, so did Natalie Portman. Let's have a quick look at this article when she went to the Oscars. Which leads me into the Oscars. Where Natalie Portman went to the Oscars red carpet with how's this for a headline? Natalie Portman's red carpet tribute to snubbed female directors. So now they're snubbed just because they didn't get nominated. The red carpet at the Oscars is a chance for celebrities to put their best foot forward and dazzle the hordes of cameras. Natalie Portman used that moment to make a big statement. I mean, it is big. It is, it's right up there. I think Martin Luther King Jr. probably would be thinking to himself today if he was alive, you know what? Natalie Portman, she's a hero. I wish I had done what she did. I wish I had her courage. I wish I had the courage to be an elite within the system and to do what she did. This is such bravery, massive. Natalie. The actress stepped out wearing a black and gold Dior Haute Couture, I hope I've said that correctly, I don't wear fancy clothes, dress and cape. She's Batwoman now, with a clear message. It was embroidered with the names of 8 female directors whom many, I wonder who the many are, believed should have been nominated for their work. Again, this is heroic bravery. Forget about the students of Tiananmen Square. This, my friends, this is bold. This is brave. This is how great victories against injustice are won. You are part of the elite. You're part of the establishment. You are wearing, which are given to you free, some of the most expensive garments ever made at a gala event where you get together with other elites, and the finest of food and backslapping is on display. And you wear a cape with the names of 8 people you think should have been nominated for awards. I mean, that's brave. That's brave. That's, as I said, Tiananmen Square. I mean, I'm sure those students at Tiananmen Square are thinking, yes, we look to you, Natalie. You are our inspiration. We look to you. Your courage is. We salute you, Natalie. We salute you. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. The seam of the cape had the women's last names written on it in gold, down it in gold. It paid tribute to Lorraine Scarfia for Hustlers. Yeah, I mean, Hustlers is right up there. I'm pretty sure in the history of cinema, people are going to look back and they're going to say, you know what? Goodfellas, The Godfather, Hustlers. I mean, it's a tough choice. Which was the best of those sort of crime films? Lulu Wang for The Farewell, Greta Gerwig for Little Women. For when I first read this article, I thought it said Greta Thunberg for the climate change activism, but it was Greta Gerwig. I'm so used to hearing Greta, it's become it's like PTSD. Marty Diop for Atlantics, Milena Matsoukas for Queen and Slim. Apologies if I'm getting these names wrong. Marilee Heller, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Celine Sciamma for Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I don't know why, but that title makes me chuckle. How do we make a portrait of the lady on fire? What we do is we take the lady, we douse her in the gasoline, we throw the match, woof. There you go, portrait of the lady on fire. Someone film it and give me my award, okay? And Elmer Harrell for Honey Boy. Now, here's the thing. I'm sorry, but none of those films come close or hold a torch, even if they've got they stand on their own various merits, to the actual films that won that were nominated in the best film category. Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, the Joker movie, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. They are at a whole nother level. If you think Hustlers is even on a par with any of those films, which film would you ditch to put Hustlers on that list? I mean, seriously. Now, I could possibly ditch one of those films and put The Hurt Locker on that list, which was directed by Catherine Bigelow, and that's a good film. That is up there at that next tier of filmmaking. By the way, so was Zero Dark 30. But you don't just get an award or get nominated because of your genitalia. This is the great irony. They're complaining that this award is all about people's genitals. That was the joke that Rebel Wilson made. And then what they do is they say that based on people's genitals, they should get nominated. So, in actual fact, the old rule, whatever they're accusing you of, they're probably doing it themselves. This effectively, they're accusing people of basing their decisions on genitals, and that's exactly what they're doing. You should get nominated because... Sorry, someone says Admiral Holder won an Oscar but didn't tell Poe. It's a funny joke. But yeah, and then of course we had this little doozy here where we had Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt got up. I watched the whole speech, and he starts his speech with this bizarre sort of, "Hey Brad, you've had too much to drink. Stop talking about the politics, bruh," moment. Where he got up and he talked about the impeachment. He makes some silly comment at the beginning about what did he say? They told me I only have 45 seconds up here, which is 45 seconds more than the Senate gave John Bolton this week. It's funny how the media, who are now all of a sudden big fans, and people who are progressive, supposedly progressive lefties, are huge fans and supporters of John Bolton, the man who was just a blooming warmonger and did so much damage in previous regimes in that regard, and now all of a sudden he's this is the guy who's being touted as their sort of savior. It's such a bizarre thing. But anyway, regardless of what you think about the impeachment, just getting up and starting with politics is never a good look. And then he goes on to say, I'm thinking maybe Quentin does a movie about it. In the end, the adults do the right thing. I don't have a dog in the fight when it comes to impeachment and Trump. I'm not an American. I can't vote in American elections. I don't live there. But reading and listening to commentary from highly educated experts in this field, not the polemicists on either side, the politicists who've got a political PR axe to grind, but actual experts, it does seem that the legal experts were saying that the technical aspects of this, the impeachment wouldn't hold up. There's the technicalities of the laws involved. It doesn't work that way. So I'm basing my opinion on that, and so yeah. Anyway, it was odd, but then I can't give Bradley too much stick, because to his credit, he then went on from there and used the next 30-40 seconds or so to actually deliver what was, I thought, a pretty good speech. Once he got the stupid politics out of the way, it's so weird. If you haven't had a chance, go and watch his speech. It is so weird because I got to the end of it. It's only about a minute long, and I thought to myself, is this sort of like obligatory? Did he feel he had to mention politics, so he just sort of jammed it in at the front and then got on with his actual speech? Because, yeah, that's what it felt like. Because he then goes on to give a speech where he thanks and praises the stunt crew and says that the stunt people don't get enough credit and recognition for their work. He, which I thought was pretty good. He's not trying to take the credit for himself. He's basically highlighting these other people who actually deserve credit for making him look good. He then also talked about Leonardo DiCaprio, and he said how happy he was to ride on his coattails, and he said the view is great, I'm happy to do that anytime. In other words, again, he's thanking him. He thanked Ridley Scott and, what's her name, from the movie Selma and Louise. He thanked them for giving him his first break. It was actually a pretty good speech, and then finally he thanked his kids. And so the speech actually ended okay, but the bizarre politics, honestly, if you haven't watched it, go and watch it. And to me, it felt like this weird thing where it's like, I don't know, they all get told you've got to mention politics. So, yeah, just bizarre. Watt says, Joker is awesome, best movie of the last decade. We're about to get on to the top 10 movies of the last decade. Before we do that, though, let's just have a quick look at the other Oscar results, and you can tell me what you think. Here he is, the man of the hour. So, I mean, there's one thing I have a question with about all of this, by the way. So let's just have a look at the nominations and the various winners. So Best Picture nominations are Ford v Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Woman, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Is there anything in there that you don't think should be there? I don't think so. I haven't seen all of them, but everything I've read and from critics and others who I trust about those films tells me that they were deserving. And of course, Parasite won. Parasite won Best Picture. By the way, for those who are saying, wow, I never saw that coming, it's Korean cinema. As I said to a friend of mine last night, I have been watching Korean cinema for a few years now because, as far as I'm concerned, they've well and truly caught up and in a lot of cases have surpassed Hollywood. There was a couple of years ago, they were producing films when Hollywood was just turning out sort of average schlocky stuff, was just mired in politics. They're actually turning out well-made films that tell good and engaging stories. There's horror movies, there's dramas, Korean horror seems to be a thing that they're quite good at. But anyway, so yeah, I'm kind of not surprised at all that a Korean film has actually turned up and cleaned up because they're making good movies. So Parasite won. We'll come back to Parasite because this is the one little issue I have really. The lead actor, Antonio Banderas, Pain and Glory. I don't know anything about that film. Leonardo, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah, I've seen that. Adam Driver for Marriage Story. I've heard that's really good. Joaquin Phoenix won for Joker. Jonathan Pryce for The Two Popes. The Two Popes, I'm kind of surprised. To me, it sort of feels more like a political movie that played to the politics of those who wanted to paint the Catholic Church and create a sort of political ambience around the Pope, and it's played into that where you pitted the two popes against each other as if one was the conservative, stale, stuck in the mud guy, Pope Benedict, and the new guy was the progressive. So I think, but other than that, I mean, I don't know if is it really up there as far as films go. I don't know. But anyway, Joaquin Phoenix for Joker. I mean, he absolutely deserved it. I watched it again the other day. My brother, who's over from Canada at the moment, and he hadn't seen it. And I own a copy now, obviously, on iTunes, because it's such a good movie. Just had to add it to the collection. And I watched it with him and talked about it with him afterwards. The first time he'd seen it, he was in awe of it. As we're watching, he kept repeating, "Man, this is phenomenal social commentary." So yeah, I mean, and Joaquin Phoenix, his portrayal in that film was just off the charts. Just off the charts. Lead actress, Cynthia Everett for Harriet, Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story, which I've heard is phenomenal. Cerise, is it? Ronan for Little Woman, Charlize Theron for Bombshell. Renee Zellweger won it for Judy. Supporting actor Tom Hanks, Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Two Popes, Anthony Hopkins. Again, I sort of question why that's in there. Al Pacino, it's Anthony Hopkins though. I haven't seen it yet, but I mean the guy could read cereal packets, and he'd still be good at it. He's a phenomenal actor. Al Pacino, The Irishman. Joe Pesci, The Irishman. Brad Pitt, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. To me, that was the one that I questioned. It felt like they sort of felt they had to give the award to that film, some award to that film. I probably would have given it to Joe Pesci, actually, in The Irishman, I think. For me, Brad Pitt was fine. It was a perfectly good performance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I wouldn't call it anything particularly out of the box or outstanding, whereas I contrast that with Joe Pesci in The Irishman, and for me, I think Joe Pesci just climbed to another ladder in his sort of acting prowess in that film, and so I don't know, that was my take on it. It's probably an era thing. Supporting actress, Kathy Bates for Richard Jewell. Love Kathy Bates. Laura Dern for Marriage Story. Scarlett Johansson for Jojo Rabbit. Florence Pugh for Little Woman. Margot Robbie for Bombshell. I'm guessing, I mean, it's everything I've heard about Marriage Story, I haven't seen it yet, is that it's a really good film, and so I'm kind of not surprised by that. Director, Martin Scorsese, The Irishman. Todd Phillips, Joker. Sam Mendes, 1917. Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And Bong Joon-ho for Parasite. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think it was either going to go Joker or Parasite. That's the only two choices there, I think, really. People were talking about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I think, yeah, I mean, the Joker was phenomenal. And Martin Scorsese, The Irishman. Look, it's a good film, but it's not his best. It's not his best. Media Maniacs says Parasite was amazing, but not perfect. A lot of great black humour and twists and turns, not to mention the actors. Animated feature film, Toy Story 4 won. I think that was probably a popular choice. Mind you, Missing Link was in there? I don't know. Not my idea of a great animated film. Anyway, animated short, don't know any of these. Adapted screenplay, Jojo Rabbit won for that. Taika Waititi, yeah, I don't know. Maybe they could have given it to Little Woman. I think possibly. Or The Irishman. That was a great adapted screenplay from a book that, would have been hard to adapt. I think harder than Jojo Rabbit, that's for sure. Original screenplay. This is a great category. Original screenplay. Knives Out by Rian Johnson, our friend and everyone's favourite director. In fact, Rian Johnson's favourite director was nominated for Knives Out. For Best Original Screenplay, Knives Out. Marriage Story by Noah Baumbach, which, all accounts, a great movie. 1917, Sam Mendes and Christy Wilson Cairns. Was it Cairns? Depends where you come from. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by Quentin Tarantino. And Parasite won. Okay. Yeah, it's probably fair, I guess. Knives Out, Ryan. It cracks me out. This just randomly. Rian Johnson is in it in an Oscar category for that film. Cinematography. Why am I not surprised to discover that Roger Deakins won it? Why? Well, I am so shocked. One of the best cinematographers ever, the best operating today, and he won it. Wow. I think that's well deserved. Best documentary feature. Don't know any of those. Best documentary short. Don't know any of those. Now this is the thing I have an issue with. The best foreign language film, and we've got Parasite in the best foreign language film as well. And it won it, and I think, okay, is it my understanding always was that best foreign language film were foreign language films, and that if you were going to win that I don't know, it feels a little bit like other films here might have been robbed. by the fact that it's won, the best film Oscar and it wins best foreign film. It sort of feels like you're giving it 2 best film awards, and I don't know how people feel like that, but I'm not a big fan of that. I think that's I think best foreign language film is an opportunity to showcase movies that people otherwise wouldn't get to see. Films that have been nominated in previous years, like The Untouchables, great French film. Actually, it got pulled off the list, I think. Sorry, it was initially in the long list and short list and didn't quite make it on, which is a shame. Sophie Scholl, The Final Days, is another one. War Witch, was it? A great African film. There's lots of films that you wouldn't otherwise see, and I think, I don't know. To me, to give it both is kind of weird to me. Media Maniac says Knives Out is great, most enjoyable film of last year. Oh, there you go. I haven't seen it yet. I'm not a The Last Jedi was terrible, but I'm not a Rian Johnson hater. I don't get the fact that people he made a terrible film, and he said he's not been particularly gracious on Twitter towards people, but people have just turned on him like he's the pariah. He's actually, Looper is a good film. He's made good films, and he will probably make good films in the future, even if he's made a bad film. I don't get the hate. So I'll probably, at some point when it comes available on a streaming service, I will watch Knives Out. Film editing, Ford versus Ferrari. Sound editing, Ford versus Ferrari. I'm not surprised by that, because it's one of those films where sound editing probably really matters, and they obviously got it right. Sound mixing, 1917. I always, with these sort of categories, I think, how do you decide? I mean, how do you say, well, the mixing in Ad Astra is better than, is less than the 1917? I don't know. I mean, I guess that they must have the experts in who really, really have the highly tuned ear, who listen for certain things. But it seems if you're even nominated, it's kind of hard. I don't know how you'd make the distinction. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for production design, yeah, that's fair. The original score, Joker won that. And it is. The score in that film is phenomenal. It was perfect. It really matched. Best original song, I'm Gonna Love Me Again by Rocketman. Yeah, weird. It's a weird category. It's a pop music category. Makeup and hair, Bombshell. Interesting. I sort of thought Joker might have stood a chance in that one. Maybe they go more traditional, but I felt the way that because makeup's an important part of that character and the way it was used in that film, it actually tells a story in and of itself. Costume design, Little Women won that. I haven't seen that yet, so yeah, but it probably seems fair from what I've heard. And then visual effects, 1917, not surprised. So overall, I think that's a pretty fair haul. I think that I don't have too many issues with it. I look at that and I don't see anything in there that I think, oh, that was an outrage, that was an injustice, that should have never happened, this person should have won. What do other people think? I mean, save up your comments for the comment. We're going to move into comments in just a second after I talk about the top 10 movies, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think people should have won who didn't, and didn't win who should have, and all those kind of things that often happens? But for me, it sort of felt generally okay. The only question I have is, how do you get Best Foreign Language Film and Best Film? It seems like you're getting a Best Film award twice. But hey, what do I know? I'm a simple guy. Probably the coronavirus that I contracted last week on the plane and the racism pandemic has addled my brain. And if I was just a little bit more woke, then maybe I would understand it. Okay, let's the moment you've all been waiting for. Drum roll, please. Top 10 movies of the last decade, the last 10 years. Let me start by highlighting what I think are my special mentions, because as I'm going through this and looking at movies that have been made in the last 10 years, there's so many. You just forget how many movies are churned out these days. Good ones, not as many, but there are a lot of movies that are made. So I think my focus might be a little bit off. Let's just tweak that, see if that helps. No. Is that better? Just racking up the focus. Apologies. Okay. Okay. So hold those thoughts on Oscars. Let's talk about this now. Let's get serious for a minute here, folks. Here's my special mentions. Films that did not make it onto my top 10 list, but which I think are worthy of a mention from the last decade. First of all is Shutter Island. Great film. Love that film. And maybe it's just the Max Richter soundtrack component. I love Max Richter, one of the best classical composers working, but his sampling he did of Dinah Washington, with This Bitter Earth, just glorious to end that film. But the whole film I thought was great. That was a really, really good film. Inception. I mean, it's Nolan. Great film. Frozen. I put Frozen in there because it was one of those, I think, how I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, but how I remember Frozen is that Frozen basically reinvigorated a bit of a stale Disney animated genre environment. It brought it back to life again in a big way. I think it created popular excitement for a whole new generation of young kids. Frozen was kind of like the Aladdin of their era. And so I think, it deserves special mention for that, absolutely. The Lego Movie, I also thought, why I give the Lego Movie special mentions, because the Lego Movie, I think in some ways, the Lego Movie was kind of like the Shrek of its era, of this generation, because Shrek was this animated film that was really for adults and kids, and it was out of the box the way it all worked. It didn't follow what you might call the traditional formula of the time, but it charted its own course and opened up a whole new pathway. The Lego Movie did the same thing. I mean, if you'd told me a couple of years before it got released that a movie with Lego characters about Lego characters would be this massive global hit pop culture phenomenon, I would have said no way. I said it'll just be a kids movie, straight to DVD kids movie. That's what it'll be. But it was, it's a good film. So that's on the special mentions. These are not the top 10. These are just the special mentions. Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. Now, Mission Impossible gets a special mention because this is a franchise that's on the up. A lot of franchises are doing this. They're nosediving. The more films they add, the further down the toilet they go. Mission Impossible's going the exact opposite way. And it is Tom Cruise's golden goose. It's his magic blimmin' coin that keeps on delivering. I don't know. He's got a painting somewhere of himself aging in a loft somewhere, and I don't know. He's drinking the blood of young whatevers, and he's sort of thriving. But these films, this is the magic sort of stuff for him, and he does it well. Ghost Protocol was a great film. Why I give Mission Impossible Rogue Nation the big thumbs up for me was, first of all, it then built on the success of Ghost Protocol and took the franchise up another level. It also was a better Bond film that year than the Bond movie that got released that year. And I like the new Daniel Craig Bond. I've got those films in my collection, but Mission Impossible Rogue Nation was a better Bond movie that year than Bond was. And the other thing about it too is, unlike the latest one, which is Mission Impossible, I can't even remember someone tell me please the name of the new Mission Impossible movie that came out last year, or the year before last, was it? And I can't even remember the name. It totally slips my mind now. But unlike that latest movie, this is one you can still watch with your family. Ghost Protocol and Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, no F-bombs, no nothing. So the latest one was great, but there's a whopping great F-bomb in the middle of it. And I remember I watched it with my kids, thinking, this is a franchise you can trust, and then boom! And I'm like, what are you doing? What the heck are you doing? Anyway, next movie, these are special mentions still. Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy gets a special mention because Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, was like the Marvel sort of Star Wars type moment. It took a film, totally unknown property, apart from those diehard comic book fans, it was an unknown property. People were looking at this thing and going, what is this? Looking at the trailers going, this is weird. These don't look like no superheroes I've ever seen before. And then the film gets released and it's like, whoa, this is phenomenal. This is awesome. It's a pop culture phenomenon. It changes the scene. He looks tasty. It actually, I Am Groot, Rocket the Raccoon. It launched the career of Chris. I'm confusing. I'm thinking Chris Pine in my head, but it's not Chris Pine. Star-Lord. But yeah, anyway, you know who I'm talking about. It launched his career in a big way. It put him on the map in a major way. And it showed that Marvel was capable of doing superhero movies that were sci-fi superhero movies that were outside of the typical sort of what you would expect and what they've been doing so far. And so it's got a special mention. Rogue One gets a special mention because Rogue One is the best of the new Star Wars movies so far. It's not perfect, but it is the best of the new Star Wars movies. And so for me, it's just got to get the special mention for that alone. Arrival. I love Arrival. Arrival is it's a great piece of non-linear storytelling and a very important and beautiful message about human dignity that you don't really see coming. So if you haven't seen Arrival, you should watch it. Hacksaw Ridge. Hacksaw Ridge is on my list. I saw someone just saying Hacksaw Ridge is on their list. Hacksaw Ridge is on there for me as well. So is The Quiet Place. I really love that film. Another special mention. Winter Soldier is not on my top 10, but it is on my special mentions. Winter Soldier, why it's not on my top 10, and it was hotly debated. I went back and forth. Should I put it on? Should I not put it on? The reason it didn't make it onto my top 10 was because, in the end of the day, I thought to myself, I'm going to follow the Martin Scorsese rule. This is not about theme parks, damn it. This is about cinema. So it didn't quite make it to the top 10, but Winter Soldier is the best Marvel movie, and it's still a great movie in its own right, but something had to give. What else have we got? The Revenant. The Revenant is just visually glorious. So it gets a special mention. Prisoners also gets a special mention. Prisoners, so The Revenant's the beautiful, glorious visual thing. Prisoners is just a very, very well told story, and so that's why it gets a special mention. Drive, Nicholas Winding Refn. Drive, just it's a film that sort of came out of nowhere, and it's also a film that just sort of showed you the magic of what cinema could be. So it gets a special mention. Unfortunately, his follow-up film was just a violent mess of ugliness. Drive was phenomenal. The Untouchables, the original French foreign language film, not the American remake with Bryan Cranston, based on the true story of a Frenchman who is a wealthy white guy, has a spinal injury, and basically thinks his life is not worth living. He thinks basically being disabled is the worst thing ever, and he wants to end it all. And then he gets a black French, I think he's French African, caregiver who comes to live with him and work full time to care for him. And he comes from the complete other side of the social tracks, different ethnicity, different socio-economic situation, but he basically teaches this guy how that life is worth living and how to really live his life, and to stop whinging, stop complaining, stop feeling sorry for himself, and to recognize that he still has value, he still has worth, even as a person with disabilities. A really beautiful film, great film. Just there's a couple of moments in it, by the way, if you haven't seen it, you're thinking, oh, maybe we'll do that for family movie night. There's a couple of older adult moments in it, just be aware of that. Rango, I'm coming to the last of my special mentions now. Rango is on my special mentions list because I think it's an animated film that was more than an animated film. It's a great Western. The visual, I love the animation in that, just the detail. And I'm a sucker for Westerns, so I really liked it. It was great. The Conjuring. The reason The Conjuring got a special mention for me is because I felt that The Conjuring sort of reinvigorated and, well, this is how I remember it anyway, it brought a bit of class back to horror. Now, I'm not saying that everything that's followed since has been classy and all the million sequels and all the rest of it, but that film, it was a good, technically well-made, scary film that brought back atmospheric horror at a time where, again, if I'm remembering this wrong, please correct me, but it seemed that we were captured by those stupid found footage movies. And I was getting so fed up with them. They're so dumb and silly, absurd jump scares, whereas this one had jump scares, but they built the tension, and man, it was a scary movie. Last three special mentions. Fury, I was going to call it Furry. Those furries. Fury is on there. I love that film, that war movie about the tank guys in the tank. That was good. Brad Pitt, Shia LaBeouf and co. Special mention goes to John Wick. It did something I didn't think you could do. Take a pretty basic concept and make it very watchable. And last two are Chronicle. I love Chronicle. Basically, you got a guy who makes a superhero film from scratch, and also a guy who I think with this film, with Chronicle, what he did was actually, ironically, I've been saying this for years, he gave us what should have really been the template for Anakin Skywalker's backstory in the prequels. I always have believed that Anakin should have been older, not a young boy when he was discovered. He already should have started expressing his Force powers. He basically should have been an older teen who didn't understand, or a young adolescent, but who was already had this amazing Force power, didn't know where it had come from, but it was he was sort of too old to start the training, and so they felt that they had to give him some training, otherwise it could go really badly. And the problem was, because of his own broken past and didn't know who his dad was and all the rest of it, it all goes horribly wrong. And basically he then turns to the dark side and becomes Darth Vader. And I thought that would have been a better backstory for him. I thought Chronicle told a better Anakin Skywalker backstory than the prequels did. And lastly for me, Ad Astra. And I've got to add probably a sneaky special mention would be, someone's just mentioned it, is Man of Steel. Man of Steel I thought was one of the better iterations of Superman that we've had. All right. Someone says The Conjuring is good, but the Warrens were frauds. Good story, but I loved it until it put me off. Yeah, and I don't. It's not a documentary. If you're looking for true stories, then don't. The Conjuring's not your true story. But I thought it just for me, why I like it was, and got a special mention, was it dug us out of that silly found footage phase that we were going through. Everything was about found footage. Apologies, I'm sort of getting myself in the right position here. Okay, so let's start with my top 10, and these are in no particular order. I'm doing these in the order in which they were released. And again, apologies, I'm just going to rack up the focus on this, see if that helps a little bit. Okay, so here we go. In the order they were released, my top 10, first on my list in 2010 is Tron, the movie Tron. And as far as I'm concerned, this movie is just great. I love this film. It is, for me, it's so it's a watchable movie. It's a film, and I still do today. I can put this on and just be absorbed in this film and watch it, and I love it. I love the world building in it. It's a simple story. It's not earth-shatteringly deep or complex, but I love the world building. I love the visual aesthetic. The story is straightforward, and it's fairly well told. It's nothing complex, but it does it well. And the soundtrack is just phenomenal. It's like, for me, I like cinema that it immerses you in a different world, and that right from when I went to see this on the big screen, it was like, this is a really immersive experience. I love this film. For me, Tron has made it onto my top 10 list, and those are the reasons why. Next on my list is the film True Grit from 2010, also from 2010. True Grit is a phenomenal film. It is a great Western, for starters. The Coen brothers are phenomenal filmmakers, and this is one of their best films. It's right up there as far as I'm concerned with No Country for Old Men. And not only that, but I own the book. I've read the book, True Grit. The book is very good. The book was Roald Dahl, the famous Roald Dahl, James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, The Twits, etc., etc. He said that this was one of his favourite all-time books ever, True Grit. And having read the book, this film is a very, very faithful adaptation. A faithful adaptation of that book. If you haven't read the book, go and read it, and you'll realise, man, they've really been faithful in their adaptation of this, and it's a good film. So for me, True Grit makes it onto the list. Next on my list, from the year 2014, I think it was 2014. Yes, it's 2014. Is Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. Interstellar for me made it onto the list for lots of reasons. It's a phenomenal piece of filmmaking. I think visually just stunning. There's lots of homage to Stanley Kubrick in this film, and in a way, I think in a very deserving way, in a way that's it's done well. but there's also lots of originality. I know some people initially didn't quite like or didn't grasp perhaps the theme of the story, and I heard a lot of people at the time say, "Oh, what are they trying to say? Love's going to save the universe. What a dumb plot." That's exactly the point, but not sentimental, silly, emotional. What is love? What's the butterflies in your tummy? Well, no, that could be a bad sandwich that you ate at lunch, so it's important you know the difference. This movie is actually saying that love is something much more profound and important than that. It is the act of self-giving, when you seek the good of another and you are even willing to sacrifice yourself for the good of another. That's what authentic love is. That's the love that changes the world. And also there's a very big theme that runs through this about technology separated from ethics. And what drives ethics, what should drive our ethical rules, is our love for truth, our love for goodness, and our love for human dignity. And those are the things that should motivate us to want to be ethical people in the way we treat others, in the way we act, etc., in the things we do. And this film has a really big theme. You remember the character played by Matt Damon, who was, remember, he's hyped up, he's the best of the astronauts, he's the elite of the elite. And then when they discover him, it turns out that he's lost sight of ethics, he's lost sight of the human dignity of the human persons, and he's now embraced anything goes. His mentality is anything goes. And he's willing to act in really immoral ways to get what he wants to. It's a great film. Great film. So Interstellar, 2014. Next film, also from 2014, is the Irish black comedy Calvary. Now, it is a black comedy. It's dark. I think this is both an important and very well-made film. Brendan Gleeson in the lead role. This is a film about, it's really, the story is about the sexual abuse crisis in the Catholic Church, and in particular it's set in Ireland, so it has a special focus on the Irish Church. But it is really, it's not, since then, I think this film, the theme of it is probably more prescient than ever. But what you've got, for those who don't know the story, is Brendan Gleeson is, he's a widower, so he's got a wife who died, he's got an adult daughter from that marriage. She's all grown up now and living her own life, and he's become a priest after his wife has died. And he's a good man, genuinely good man. The film starts with him sitting in a confessional box, and then a guy, totally anonymous, sits on the other side of the screen, gets into the confessional box at the beginning. And it's a great and powerful opening to a film. And pulls back the screen and says, "I know you're a good man, Father, and I know you're totally innocent, and you are a genuinely good man, but I was the victim of sexual abuse, and someone has to pay for the injustice. And so I'm coming back," I think it was 7 days or 3 days, "I'm coming back and I'm going to kill you. You are going to be the sacrifice, basically, for the sins that were perpetrated against me." That's the start of the film. And then he rushes out of the confessional box. The guy is gone by that stage, and the whole film becomes this question of, as he meets these various characters, who is it? He's trying to figure out who wants to kill him. There's this beautiful imagery of this big rock, which is like the hill of Calvary that Christ is crucified on, looming. It gets closer and closer as the film progresses. There's lots of stuff in this that, yeah, it's black, but it's a film that you get to the end of and it just stays with you. It's a very, 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 very powerful piece of filmmaking. Domhnall Gleeson is also in it, actually, Hux. So there's this great moment where Brendan Gleeson is acting alongside his son, and Domhnall plays he's a serial killer. He's murdered a couple of people and he's in jail for it. And Brendan Gleeson, obviously the priest, who's the chaplain, going to see this man and give him pastoral advice and everything else. And there's a sort of final moment of repentance where he actually admits what he's done and repents of his sin. There's beautiful moments between him and his father in the acting that just, I mean, even for that alone, it's well worth seeing. Calvary, great film. Next on my list from 2015, the next year, it had to make it on the list, was Mad Max Fury Road. Not Mad Max Fury Road, all you desperate women furries out there want it to be the Mad Max Fury Road. It's a simple story. It is a there and back again. It's The Hobbit on steroids. With gasoline, right? It is. I love this film. I love this film. It's such a simple premise. The story is straightforward, but it is so well told. And there's the way the music works in with the visuals and It's a great example too of, interestingly, it starts with a male and a female lead character who are at odds. It's the very feminist model, I would suggest, of male-female relations, the militant feminist model, which is where men and women are at war with each other, and it's nothing more than a power struggle, and you've just got to take power, and that's how you get equality. So that's how the film really starts. But then what they realise is that they are partway through it, maybe a third to a half of the way through the film, a third of the way through the film, they realise that in actual fact it's complementarity that will allow them to win the victory. So if they stop fighting with each other for power and actually start working with their various gifts and start respecting each other, then they can actually win this, and they do. That's what wins it. And so that aspect of it was fascinating. But it's a really well told story. The visuals are phenomenal in this film. This is a film, and it hasn't been repeated since. I know that Frank Miller has got other films in this lineup planned. It'll be interesting to see how the visual aesthetic goes. But the visual aesthetic in this film is phenomenal, just phenomenal. Absolutely amazing. Okay, from 2015. So Mad Max Fury Road was 2015, but also in 2015 we got the absolutely phenomenal Sicario. Sicario, man, I love this movie. I can't wait till the trilogy is completed. There's something about Taylor Sheridan's writing. I can't wait to see this trilogy completed. My instinct is that every film in the trilogy is going to be a phenomenal film. But the first one is, I think, the best still of the two that we've got so far. Cinematography, directing. I think also what the first one did better. I've got a detailed review of Sicario on my in my catalogue of videos. You can go and watch it on my YouTube channel. But the reason why I think Sicario, for me, is one of the big reasons why it's better, aside from things like visuals and stuff, is that Sicario put both ideas out there. This whole idea, you got this young, probably naive, you'd say, FBI agent, played by Emily Blunt, and then you've got these wolves around her, basically, who are fighting this border war, and they'll do anything. And so one side is she's got this firm belief that you should be moral. In order to save the world, you must also be moral in your actions. And they don't have that belief. They believe the end justifies the means. You save the world, and if you have to break a few eggs, if you have to kill a few people, you do that. And the film puts both ideas on the table and lets you, the viewer, make a decision. It's really well told in that regard. The second film is a little less subtle. It sort of tries to tell you outright what it thinks that you should think about these issues. But yeah, if you want to see a detailed review of Sicario, then go and watch it. And by the way, the other thing about Sicario is, while we're talking about female leads, is she's not overpowered. She's not a Mary Sue. It's a genuine journey. It's through her eyes we connect with her, and she has a moment where she is overpowered by another male character in a fight, a very serious fight that threatens her life, and it's realistic. She doesn't have absurd physical prowess that she should not have, and I think, yeah, again, it's part of the charm and the beauty of this film is that it's actually a lot more realistic. Okay, moving along, 2016, and in 2016, I've talked about Korean cinema, and someone's already made reference to it earlier already today, but for me, Train to Busan from 2016 is a phenomenal film. It is one of the best zombie films ever made. It was one of the best Korean cinema films, I think, that's ever been made. It is woefully unheard of in this part of the world, or underrated in this part of the world. A lot of people haven't seen it. I still encounter people who have not seen this film. They know about Host. They don't know about this. Everyone knows all about Parasite now. This film is a great film. The plot is pretty simple. You've got a zombie virus that breaks out in Korea, and you have a father and a daughter and a ragtag group of others who are desperately trying to outrun this horde, and it's in a train situation. The action, the way it's shot, the story, it's compelling. It holds you right to the very end. It is a great film. I absolutely love Train to Busan. If you haven't, I mentioned this in a live stream a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, and someone contacted me afterwards and said, I just watched Train to Busan. I watched your live stream, saw you recommended it, watched it, and was blown away by it. It truly is. This is one of those films that it's a good film. It is a good film. Yeah, really good film. So Train to Busan. We're on to our last four now. Last three, sorry. And again, these are not in any particular order. I haven't ranked them 10th to 1st. This is just the order in which they were released. From 2017, the film Logan is in my top 10. Logan is a phenomenal film. It is, again, it's a genre bender. It's really a Western. It's got superheroes in it, but it's a Western. What you're watching is a Western, and it's so well told. And if you go back and watch the Wolverine film that James Mangold was involved with immediately before Logan, where he's in Japan, you realise that's actually not a bad film. He's starting to get into the rhythm of what eventually you see come to a culmination in Logan. There's weakness in that previous Wolverine film. There's things that are a bit silly and stuff that are gone by the time he gets to Logan. Logan, it's like he's perfected the craft of how to write this story as a Western, and he does it well. He does it really well. It's a great film. And Patrick Stewart is phenomenal in it. There's these beautiful moments. It addresses the question of aging and dementia. It's a superhero film about what would happen. It looks realistically at these things. What would happen if your superheroes like this started to age, and how would that play out? And what would happen to an aging Dr. X, Professor X, who had this amazing superpower of the mind, but he got dementia? That'd be really dangerous. And the film, it was a good film. There's a good film. For me, it's in my collection, especially the black and white edition. If you haven't watched it in black and white, it's a real treat. A real treat. 2 to go. 2017, also 2017. One of my favourite films of the last 10 years, Blade Runner 2049. This film is just visual eye candy, man. It is, again, it's such an immersive experience. I went to see this film in a cinema. I went to see it with a mate of mine, Shannon, if you're watching. Back in New Zealand, I was staying with my mate Shannon. He said, let's go to a movie. I was doing some work in the city where he lives, and he's like, let's go to a movie. I said, okay. And Blade Runner had just come out, so we went to see Blade Runner 2049. We get into the film, and the movie is literally just starting. The opening credits and everything are rolling, and then all of a sudden below us, there's a restaurant below us, the movie theatre, and one of their air conditioning fans or fans on one of their fridges or something breaks, and maybe an extractor fan, and it just comes on, and through the whole movie there was this constant coming from the floor you could hear. Initially we thought, oh, is this part of the film? Is this some special effect? And then we realised, no, it's not. Even though we had that annoying, and it was a very annoying distraction, I came out of that film and I was in awe of that film. I still, despite the fact that there was a stupid distraction, when I went back and saw it without the distraction, it was like, this is great. And it's in my collection. I own the digital copy, and I love this film. It is so well made visually. I love the story concept. Jared Leto, maybe a little bit, choose the scenery for sure, but maybe a little bit too much in places. But it's minor. One thing I thought was really well done was the use of Harrison Ford. When I saw the previews for this and the trailers, I thought, oh no, this is going to be a buddy cop movie. So they're going to make Blade Runner, and they're going to make a sort of dark buddy cop movie. He's going to team up with the younger, newer version of himself, and the old wise head is going to teach the young buck a few tricks, and there's going to be, honestly, that's what I thought they were going to do, and the trailers kind of implied that that's what was going to happen. But in actual fact, Ryan Johnson, Han Solo, Harrison Ford, the man himself, does not actually even feature into the film until much later in the movie. And the way that he's used in the film, I think, was just excellent. It's not his story, and rightly so. He is a secondary character to the main story, and it was so good the way they used him. When he appears, it's not a buddy cop situation, even when he's in the film. This is a good film. Visually, just phenomenal. I mean, whether I'm watching this on an iPad, whether I'm watching it on my TV screen at home, I don't have a 4K, but it's high definition. It's just something to behold. This film, Yeah, and you're right. Someone says, who said this? So another Jen said the poster makes it look like a buddy cop movie too. You're right, it does. That looks like a buddy cop or a Star Wars type film. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I love some of the concepts in this. I love that concept of the AI girlfriend that he's in a relationship with, and how he transports her with him. And yeah, it raises some interesting sort of ethical questions. That little component of the story around technology and how dehumanized these things could be. And yeah, there's that. Look, I'm not gonna spoil it for anyone if you haven't seen it. Gee, it's a good film. It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. I totally get that. Some people are just going to say it's not my cup of tea. Maybe I felt it dragged a bit or whatever. But I love this film. One of my favorites. And last on my list, I don't think any surprises here, from 2019 is Joker. Top 10 movies of the last decade. Joker easily made it onto that list. It was the first film I thought of. First film that I thought of. Yeah, what can I say about this film? If you, a lot of you are possibly here because you've watched my review of Joker. It's the film that really is very prescient social commentary about autonomy, rampant individualism, isolation, about corporations, about the loss of community, and how that affects human society. Arthur Fleck's problem is not that he's mentally unwell. That could be a very tempting thing to think. But at the start of the film, remember, we are told that he is on 5 different medications? So he's not suffering from a lack of medication. He's also got that, he's got a counsellor. He's got a care program. It's not working though. Because what's missing, and the real problem in his life, is not the lack of actual medical intervention. It's the lack of authentic community. There is no community in his life, and not just his life, but the world around him. And that's very much a strong aspect of this film, and I think it's so very, very prescient for where we're at today. So yeah, there you go. There's my top 10. So comments time. Tell me what you think, please. Let me hear your comments. Let's start with GameFap says Blade Runner 2049 is amazing. I agree. Thank you. I also agree. You must be intelligent like me. Media Maniac says love Ryan Reynolds in the main role. What film are you talking about? I don't think we talked about a Ryan Reynolds film. Media Maniac also says Rachel getting pregnant doesn't make sense. Blade Runner, yeah, that was a very interesting twist on things. But I think I take that as sort of poetic license. You're like, okay, yeah. David Carrington says I was bored in Blade Runner 2049. I haven't even got to the part near Harrison Ford. Yeah, and to be fair, like, it's not everyone's cup of tea, and I totally get that. But yeah, for me, I just absolutely love this film. Media Maniac says you've always been good to Joker, Brendan. You can go. Here we go. Another Jen says he's on 7 medications. Okay, so that's even worse. And he's still not getting the help that he actually needs. Understate Nate says his mum is Loretta Stinson, who once told her son his dad was a TV show host. Yeah, that was so weird. That relationship with his mother is so dysfunctional. So dysfunctional. Here's the interesting thing, though, about that Murray, isn't it? Murray, played by Robert De Niro. There's a scene where Arthur is sitting in the changing room, the dressing room, before he goes on to the live audience with Murray. And I don't know if you've noticed it. A lot of people missed it, I think. But there's a big photograph of Murray on the wall. And the photograph has been... they've done one of those sort of silhouette type images, things where you take the shadow and the rest of the face and facial features disappears. What's interesting, he's got a big smile on, and if you look at that, go and pause it. You can probably Google it and find an image. In fact, let's do it right now. We can actually do this right now with the new technology that is open to us. And I'll show you something really interesting about about Murray's show and about this image. Stefan says Blade Runner 2049, I believe, is better than the original. It's funny enough, I actually think you're right. And I was around for the hype of the first one. I've seen the first one. And when I was a kid, it was sort of one of those films. It's like, hey, you've seen Blade Runner? But the thing about Blade Runner, I remember even the first time I watched it, I was like, visually it's just phenomenal. It was you're like, wow, this is amazing. But the thing was that it never, the story was lacking. The story was lacking. Whereas this one, I think that the story and the character development and things like that are much better. So, there's some scary. Here we go. Here's the image I want to show you. So, let's see if everyone can see this. I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to open image in new tab. Technology, man. Here we go. Here's the image. I'm about to show it to you. So, look at this image here. And a lot of people might have missed this. So I'll go back to here to do this. Technology. Now, you see that image from the film? That's Arthur waiting to go on to the show with Murray. Now, what do you notice about that photograph in the background of Murray? Well, if you look carefully at his smile, he looks suspiciously like the Joker himself. Now, there's lots of ways you can interpret this, I guess. One way is that you could interpret this by saying that perhaps Arthur's world is now so jaded and distorted that he's starting to see that smile, that smile everywhere, and sort of he ends up embracing that as well. I think another interpretation is to say, well, basically Murray is just as much a problem as, as what Joker is. They're the same. It's one and the same. People look down on the Joker and he's evil and look at what he did to those lovely men who work for Wayne Enterprises on that subway. But the media, Murray represents the media. And I think there's something in that. I don't think that's accidental at all. Look at that smile. And the way it's portrayed. I think it's done deliberately. I really do. And I think there's that whole idea that subtly you're being exposed to that these people really are corrupt, that they are the very thing they're accusing him of being, and that it's not so black and white. So, yeah, resembles Heath Ledger's Glasgow smile. Okay, where were we? Back to this. So there you go. Technology, man. Isn't that awesome? So yeah, I think that's all I really want to say. But if you want to chuck in some comments, I've got a few minutes now before we shut up shop for the day. Someone says, here we go. Who's this? Another Gen 42 says Arthur Fleck might have murdered the girlfriend, visibly upset as he walks down the hall and flashing lights in the window while he is in his living room. Yeah, funnily enough, I agree with that. That's the one. There's a big question mark about that, right? Did he actually murder the lady next door? And the film, I think very rightly so, if he did not chose not to show that. I think that would have been, I don't know, just would have been a step too far in gratuity and other things. But I think also it leaves an open-ended question for us. And it's a very clever piece of storytelling not to show us and not to answer that question. But I was watching it again the other day with my brother. I think it's the third or fourth time I've seen it. And there's little clues there that make me think that maybe he did. As horrible as that thought is, that maybe he did. Someone says, Mod M says, no Joker spoilers, please. Yeah, okay, mate, I will not try to spoil any Jokers for you, any more of the Joker. Media Maniac says, 2049 Blade Runner is much more exciting than the original, but there are still a few plot holes, and Jared Leto says, yeah, Jared Leto, he's funny. And clearly he's an actor who's quite self-confident. He's quite full of himself, right? He was really angry about being replaced in the Joker movie. Not really angry, but he certainly had some terse comments to say about it all. And but I look at his Joker in the Suicide Squad, and I was like, oh no, I can't. Honestly, no. I mean, honestly, you've got Jack Nicholson. Great Joker. Heath Ledger, phenomenal Joker. You've got You've got Joaquin Phoenix, phenomenal Joker. You've got, I can't remember the actor's name, but the guy who played the campy Joker in the original Batman TV series, good Joker. Heath Ledger's Joker? I don't know what he was going for, but I don't think he quite nailed whatever it was he was going for. It was like, what is this? I think he's got too much of the musician in him. And I know this, I am a musician. And musicians, when they get into they can get into their little ego trap. And it's a very, very big issue I've noticed. I don't know why, but more so with musicians. Maybe it's just I've hung around musicians more. I've got friends who are who do sort of acting and theatre and that kind of stuff, and that's been their interest. But it seems musicians have more of this issue generally, this ego trap they can get into, that they sort of this weird, you don't understand my art, and I am really important, and what I'm doing is just off the spectrum, whereas and I think there's too much of that, and I think that's that Joker was sort of a reflection of that. Someone says, anyone noticed that when Joker was born, quote unquote, in the ambulance crash, Gotham was also symbolically born? Yeah, it is that. There's lots of that. Also, so is Batman. They both are born. I won't say any more. I don't want to spoil it, but remember that scene? They are both born in that. Nightbreed says, please talk about The Grey. Fantastic film that every man needs to see. Yeah, I really love The Grey. A friend of mine who I recommended it to got disappointed with me. He's like, oh, this film was so dark and down. Yeah, it is. It could definitely be described as leaning towards a nihilism, which I don't support at all. I'm a man of the resurrection. I'm a man of hope. But what I love about The Grey is beautifully shot, beautifully told. I think it's grasping at something. It's a filmmaker who's very much a product of his culture, trying to grasp at this question of how do we find meaning, and particularly as men, how do we find meaning as men? I love that. It's on my wall somewhere actually here, stuck on I printed it out. Once more into the fray, into the last good fight I've ever known. Live and die on this day. Live and die on this day. I love that quote. I love that quote. A lot of people, though, if you haven't seen The Grey, or maybe you have, didn't hang around for the end credit scene. There's a really, 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 really important final scene after the end credits. And so many people did not and have not seen that scene. It's very brief, but it's very important. Very important. Very, very important. And if you haven't seen that scene, then The Grey can seem a bit dark. And my friend didn't see it. Someone says, Arthur let Gary go because Gary had always been nice to him. That's why I think he didn't kill Sophie. Yeah, I think that's one possible interpretation. But then he had actually been nice to him. She'd only been nice to him in a way that wasn't real. I won't spoil it, so I'm trying not to spoil it for those who haven't seen it, in a way that wasn't real. Watt says it's left ambiguous in the film. Oh, interesting. I didn't realize this. Okay, so Watt says Todd Phillips has said that he doesn't kill her. That's interesting. I didn't know he'd said that. Thank you for adding that contribution. Well, if that's the case, the filmmaker has said it. That's it. He didn't kill her. He didn't kill her. If that's what he's saying, the guy who created the film is saying, no, he didn't kill her, then he didn't kill her. Interesting. But it is left with that ambiguity where you could ask the question, well, maybe he did or maybe he didn't. Stefan says, for me, Joker's ending was him on the car being cheered. The last scene in the asylum was not needed. Yeah, I think the last scene is, Stefan, that's an interesting point. I think the last scene is there really to try and cement the mythology and to sort of cement the idea of him being an Arkham and the fact that I think it wraps it up. So he's been arrested. It shows you that he's been arrested. It puts us in trajectory now, the everything in momentum for Batman and what's to come next. But I think also it puts perhaps a bow, a nice neat bow on that film, whereas leaving it open-ended on the car, it might have been sort of like, well, what's happened to him? Is he now in charge of Gotham? What they've done basically is they've situated the film in the existing mythology by putting that ending in there. because it's not open-ended. He's not the king of Gotham. You're not sitting there going, well, I don't remember the Joker ever getting to this point, whereas now he's got this mob at his disposal. So the final scene, I think, puts it back into the mythology firmly by sort of closing it all off. So Media Maniacs, he had two scenes in Blade Runner 2049, and they were to kill women and spout exposition. All the other Jokers were great, even Hamill. It's true. I can't forget Mark Hamill's Joker, can we? His one was absolutely phenomenal. Let me see. Now, I think... Here are we. So, sorry, let me put that comment up again from Media Maniac. And you said he had two scenes in Blade Runner 2049. Sorry. I think you said Ryan Reynolds, but I think you mean Ryan Gosling, do you? Not Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Gosling's the main character. I'm assuming that's what you meant before when you said live and die on this day. Live and die on this day. And so this is the interesting question for me that really still fascinates me. Did he imagine everything? Is the Joker real? Is this really the Joker? Is he just another inmate in the asylum? Did he just imagine it all? I hope it's not that, because I think that would really undercut the beauty of this film and why it works so well and what it added to the mythology. When he meets Bruce Wayne, that added to the mythology. The question of his parentage, who his father is, that added to the mythology in a big way. So my hope is that it's not just some weird fevered dream and sort of that's it. Jose says, you a Paul Thomas Anderson fan? Yes, I am actually. I can be. I can be. I do like that. Someone says to me, please turn off that dripping tap. Apologies, that's the second thing we're going to have to fix. It's not a dripping tap that you can hear. What you can hear is every time someone makes a comment, I get a blip. Just like that. So let me see if I can deal with this problem. Boom, boom, boom. See, that's what you're hearing. Here we go. Now, someone make a comment. Hey, we fixed it. It only took all live stream. Apologies for who raised that issue first. John Coleman. I'm sorry, John. My humble apologies to you, my friend, for the dripping tap noise. Chinese water drop torture. There we go again in Wuhan. I will have none of that corona-related racism. Thank you. I love the fact that Joker and the Batman come face to face in that film. Yes, and also the lineage. I suspect they are related in this particular envisaging of the universe, and that is such a great adaptation. That is such a great addition to the Gotham universe, to the Batman universe, to have that. I think I really love that. Media Maniacs has really loved Bruce sliding down the pole at Wayne Manor. I noticed that too. Anybody else notice that? He's in his playground and he slides down the pole when Arthur comes to the gate. That is great. I mean, that's got to be homage. Surely that's got to be homage. There can't be an accident. I mean, if it is, it's a glorious, happy coincidence. But it was phenomenal. Yes. So we've turned off the water torture. Yay. Apologies for everyone for the fact that I've been torturing you for this entire live stream. So there you go. Any last comments before we wrap it up? What do you think about the Oscars? What do people think? Did they mostly get it right? Have I forgotten any films on my top 10 list? GameFap has asked me a question. Now that the awards season is over, do you think Warner Brothers will announce a Joker sequel, and do you want to see one? As I understand it, a Joker sequel is going to be happening. Well, I thought it was. An article I read a couple of weeks ago was indicating that. Who knows, maybe not. I don't know if I want to see one. My first thought was, when I heard about it, how seriously they were considering a sequel, I thought, why? This is so good. I don't know. Like you read The Killing Joke, the comic. It's this great standalone comic. I don't think you don't feel like you want then to carry on with a sequel to that. It's like, yeah, this is an addition to this existing character and story and the whole Batman universe we love. And you have this standalone story and it's done it well. I don't know. I suspect that if they came back for a sequel, it would be a disaster. That's my inclination. It would make a mess of things. It would make a mess of things. Yeah. Nightbreed says we should go over the best soundtracks of the last decade too. The Grey, Hostiles, The Revenant, John Wick, and Interstellar, and Joker. Yeah, that's not a bad idea, is it? I've been thinking about doing something on soundtracks. So maybe that's an upcoming episode. The best soundtracks of the decade. There's probably a lot you could choose from. How about foreign movies top 10 list? Funny you should mention Korean. I was thinking about doing something on Korean cinema, some good Korean films that I've seen. And Stefan says, the film that everybody seems to hate but you love. Yeah, that is a good question. What is the film that I love that everyone... probably Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition. And I'm not going to pretend that film ain't got problems. The Ultimate Edition is better than the one that was released theatrically. But I like that. For me, it's... I like it. I like it. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to admit it, that I like that film. Yeah. Yeah, Hostiles. Hostiles is a great film. And Max Richter is a phenomenal composer. Max Richter is one of the best modern classical composers who's working today, and he's now doing a lot more television and film soundtracks as well. But a lot of people don't realise, they may have heard his music. If you've ever watched The Leftovers, that's Max Richter. Hostiles was Max Richter. What else was... the one, the TV series, HBO series with Tom Hardy in it, that's Max Richter. There's lots that Max Richter has done, but Max Richter in particular, I really love his. Like he composed a ballet called Wolf Works. He composed the music for a ballet. It's about Virginia Woolf, and yeah, there's some beautiful pieces he's composed in there. He released an album a few years ago, which I highly recommend. It's on Spotify. Well, it used to be on Spotify. Called Vivaldi, or The Four Seasons Reimagined, by Max Richter. And he took Vivaldi's Four Seasons and then he adds to them. So beautiful renditions of the various parts of the Four Seasons. And then he'll add these beautiful Max Richter flourishes on the end of a piece that are just some of them are so beautiful. So I'd highly recommend that. John, thank you for the super chat. I got £2 for ending the drip. I'm going to start annoying people in every single live stream now, and they can pay me to stop being annoying. Apologies for that, John. That was hilarious. Because I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, I better turn that off. and then I think, I wonder how loud it is. But it turns out it was loud. Media Maniac says Batman v Superman sucks. Snyder is way too cynical. Yeah, and see, that's the standard response. Like I said, that's the film. Someone asked me, before, what is the film? Here we go. Stefan said the film that everybody seems to hate but you love. Well, that's the one there. And you've proved it true. Batman v Superman sucks. Snyder is way too cynical. And also Nightbreed's chimed in. Okay, guys. Okay, I get it. I've got coronavirus. I've caught racism, the pandemic. And I've clearly, my brain has gone wonky. I have a problem here, and that problem is my like of Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition. I always have to preface it. It's like someone saying, I'm not a racist, but I'm not a sexist, but right. It kind of sounds like that. I always have to preface and say, the Ultimate Edition, the BVS Batman v Superman theatrical version had half an hour of footage cut out of it. And that half an hour of footage is actually quite important. Doesn't make the movie perfect, but without that half an hour of footage, man, it is a mess. Yes, Nightbreed says quite rightly, Arrival, the film Arrival, has The Nature of Daylight by Max Richter. The Nature of Daylight, or On the Nature of Daylight, is one of his great pieces. Here we go. I'm collecting money for a Russian remake. How am I going to say this? Man versus Superman, Dawn of Vodka. It's a very good film. In Mother Russia, they love the movie about the Batman. Batman clearly Russian. Nightbreed, I agree with you. I'd watch that movie. Sir Stone says, "Is this Roger Stone? Roger Stone, is that you? Are you on my stream?" No, Sir Stone. I thought you were in jail. Oh, by the way, I should say, Sir Stone, before I seriously go back to your comment and acknowledge it and read it like a normal human being, not like a dysfunctional bloomin' Instagram host, is I think one really, really important thing that we should all remember, that we mustn't forget, is that Epstein didn't kill himself. Okay, Sir Stone, let me get back to your comment. I know I'm late to the stream, but thanks for always making great videos, man. Thank you, Sir Stone. That's very, very kind of you to say. I really appreciate that. And by the way, the correspondence I get from people, the emails and the messages and stuff, thank you. You guys are awesome. Joining in the live streams, I'm serious about this. And thanks to you guys. Now, I know we've got an issue with frame rates that I've got to fix up for our next stream, but hopefully you've enjoyed a much improved stream this time around. Thanks to your support, I was able to take a step up the ladder, get the new software, improve things here. And so hopefully going forward our streams are going to get more exciting and interesting. And release the Snyder Cut. I love Batman v Superman. I can't wait for the Snyder Cut. I actually do want to see the Snyder Cut. I actually think, though, that going back and I watched Justice League again. I watched it with my kids, actually, last year. It came out on streaming or something, I think, when our streaming service just popped up, so we watched it. It was really good. We actually all enjoyed it. It's actually okay. It's actually okay, that film. So it'll be interesting to see. I do want to see the Snyder Cut, just for reference sake. Yeah. It was cut up weird. People saying that Snyder Cut is better. Media Maniac says Batman v Superman, yawn of justice. Look, don't come here, Media Maniac, with your racism. Everyone's a racist and everything they say is racism. Get woke and enjoy the film. That's what I say about Batman v Superman. 2020 is the year of the Snyder Cut. Here's the thing though. Let me tell you what I think about this whole Snyder Cut phenomenon. It was kind of cutesy. It was kind of fun when you got fans in a little community doing it. It's kind of cutesy when Snyder chucks up a couple of cryptic posts. When he starts pushing it a little bit hard, it's kind of like, okay, dude, it's getting a little kind of, it reeks a little bit now of desperation. And the problem is if you don't deliver, so they actually put the Snyder Cut out, and people go, "Oh, that was terrible." That's a real reputation killer, right? That's a real reputation killer. Okay, a couple more comments. Nightbreed says, "Have you seen Bone Tomahawk?" Yeah, I have seen Bone Tomahawk, actually. That bit with the bones and the whistle, oh, it gets me every time. That was and especially if you're like me, a bit of a fan of the westerns. That's a well-made film. Folks, thank you so much for joining in this live stream. Don't forget, if you want to contribute, you can do that, please. I really appreciate the support. It helps me to do things like we've done here and upgrade things and keep the channel going and keep doing this work, and obviously want to be able to put more of it out there, but I can't do that without your support. So thank you so much. Thank you to the community who keep turning up to these live streams. Let's keep growing this. I think this will be awesome. Now that we've got a platform that's not just me, because what it was before, those who didn't realize, it was me in front of my iPhone. I was streaming from the iPhone, and because that was all I had to work with. And so there's a big improvement. I think hopefully this will draw a few more people in. Get that frame rate problem sorted for next episode. Sir Stone says, "I'm not Roger Stone. Sorry to disappoint you." No, I didn't think you were. That would be hilarious though if Roger Stone's he's watching this live stream and messaging me from prison. Yeah, GameFap says there's also the possibility of Warner Brothers being afraid of getting embarrassed by the Snyder Cut. I agree. I don't know if it'll happen. Bone Tomahawk, whoa man, a chilling movie. It is a chilling movie. It's like, ugh, when you realise what is going on there. Pretty dark places, but yeah, it's well made. And they made it on a budget too. You got to admire the tenacity of making that film. Yeah, well, I certainly think so anyway. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you for your support. If you want to support the channel, there's a link for PayPal below. You can make a contribution, just put a tip in the jar. There's a Patreon as well. Upstairs, go upstairs on YouTube, and you will see on my YouTube channel on the homepage there's a link for both PayPal and Patreon. If either of those are not working, I really, really appreciate the support. Media Maniac says, I was kidding, Brendan. It's fine if you put Joker in your top 10 or love Batman v Superman. Joker doesn't suck. No, it's true. And I totally understand that that people don't like, a lot of people don't like Batman v Superman. I'm okay with that, because that's the thing about movies, you know. It's not the end of the world. That's the thing about disagreement. It's actually okay to disagree with people. Thanks, Jose. Thanks for another Gen 42. Yeah, and let's keep that quality content coming. You guys are awesome. I'll see you next time on the live stream.